You got a new face here this morning. And I've got a lot of new faces here this morning. A short introduction and then a short reflection on today's gospel. I'm Father Robert Biron. I was ordained 47 years ago for this diocese, and now I'm here in Hampton as a retired priest with Father Gary and Boniface. So I'd like to thank them publicly for making my transition much easier. I spent most of my priesthood in the southern tier of New Hampshire, many years in the seacoast area, starting in Somersworth, where I started off my first love there, then on to Dover, and then between being an associate and pastor, 14 years in Keene, in Cheshire County at St. Bernard's Parish, then back out east to be chaplain at UNH. And while I was there, I was given a phone call by the bishop and said that I was going to New London. And I went, and I stayed there for 18 years. So until my retirement this month. I knew Father Gary as a newly ordained priest at St. Bernard's in Keene. I welcomed him when the oils were still wet on his hands and when I had a little bit more hair. And now he's welcoming me to his rectory. And probably payback time, I don't know. And I hope to help him out with weekend liturgies. I'm from Berlin, up in the White Mountains, and rather proud of that fact. And I'm very happy for the years that I've served throughout the diocese. Been very happy. And mostly because of the wonderful people that I've encountered in my life through the priesthood of Jesus Christ. And I'm looking forward to meeting you as well. We'll get to know each other. A little bit about my, on a personal note, 1 year ago, I celebrated a 1-year anniversary of a kidney transplant. And it was successful. I had a wonderful donor. And with all of that, I spending a lot of time in isolation. Why? Because they kill your immune system. And of course, what a time to have your immune system killed with COVID. So I've been living a hermit's life practically for 1.5 years. 2 weekends ago was the first time in 1.5 years that I was allowed to give communion by my doctors. But they did so on the condition that I only give communion in the hand. And I'm an obedient soul. And because my kidney doctor makes Captain Bligh look like Mr. Rogers, I decided that I am going to obey him and give communion only in the hand for obvious reasons. So enough about kidneys and enough about me. Let's talk about the gospel. How would you like to be sent off with no money, no food, not even a cane? How would you like? How would you like to be told, don't take anything, but you can take your sandals, you know? You got to travel light, you got to keep moving, you got to do it, it's good, and I want you to put your trust completely in me. And having nothing means only one thing, that you have to depend completely, to trust completely upon God. That makes sense to me. One verse, why 2 by 2? I pondered that for a while. And of course the answer is given, well, you don't want to go alone, so you go 2 by 2 to give comfort when you're sad, advice when you're confused, and maybe a little sympathy when things don't go right. So I'll give you 2 examples of 2 by 2s, 2 examples of 2 by 2s about discipleship. In contrast, very different experiences of discipleship. The first 2 by 2 happened years ago when Father Gary and I were on vacation in an island tourist spot. And we decided that we had enough of the big tourist city and the hotels, that we were going to go off to see the real island. So we took the Jeep and off we went, and we came to the first village in the countryside. A poor place, far away from all of the riches that we had seen so far. So we said, well, why not visit the local church? And we did. And when we got there, The church was there, but it had no roof, and it had rained. And so we went to the residence, knocked on the door, and a couple answered the door. They were lay missionaries, and they were there, 2 by 2. A lay couple from Ontario, a husband and wife, if you want. They wanted to do something with their lives, and they wanted to do something more. The kids were all grown up, and so they decided to go off and do missionary work. And they were so happy to see us. We just like barged in, and we had walked in what we didn't know in that moment of discipleship in a very difficult situation. They were close to giving up because they felt their efforts really hadn't amounted to much. And they were discouraged because the people had not accepted them for cultural reasons. And you could sense that there was sorrow and deep sadness. They could not fill the gap of misunderstanding that existed between these people themselves, husband and wife, and this teeming village of sugarcane workers. Well, and the only explanation that they could give was they had been sent. The gospel. Nothing had changed in 2,000 years. So words of encouragement and promises of financial help. And as we were leaving, Father Gary and I looked at each other and I said, well, at least they have one another. Where would they be without hands to hold? Where would each other's hands to hold? One could only hope that things got better as time went on. I don't know. I think Father Gary had corresponded a little bit with them, you see. Maybe that's the best reason for sending them out 2 by 2. My friends, there's a lesson in there for us. You can go through just about anything in life as long as you have a hand to hold on to. Don't take that for granted. There's a lot to be said for 2 by 2 and a hand to hold on to, you see. There's nothing sentimental about discipleship. So the other couple, the other 2 by 2, this happened a few years ago, and what struck me about this couple was I had never heard of them. They were called the Peruvian martyrs of Chimbote in Peru. And one of our mission co-op priests, Father Ahern, mentioned them to me, and so I looked them up on the computer, and there they were, the Peruvian martyrs. They looked like 2 college kids, very, very young. One of them was 31, the other one was 33. Zbigniew and Michael, they were from Poland, and they're very young faces. And what had happened is that they were shot. They were killed simply because they were priests in the town of Pariacoto in the Diocese of Chimbote, only a few years after their ordination. Zbigniew was called the Little Doctor, and he helped people get better with words of hope. Father Michael was especially loved by the children, and they still hold him in their hearts, it is said, according to that article. These 2 young priests, their blood-soaked T-shirts, they are now beatified by the church. Blessed Zbigniew, blessed Michael. Their blood-soaked T-shirts are venerated as relics in the parish church. You can look it up online. Peruvian martyrs. Be inspired. If the first lesson is that you can go through just about anything as long as you've got a hand to hold on, the second lesson is you can go through just about anything if you've got a sense of purpose, if you really believe in what you're doing. And that's the lesson that I got from Zbigniew and Michael. Father Zbigniew said, I'm a happy priest thanks to the many people I've met in my formation. Overall, I'm very well received. I feel it over and over again. That is important to me. I am myself, and that's all I want to be. Father Michael said, the people are very good here. The kids shout greetings to me. They don't have an organ, but people play their own instruments. See the difference now. They're all disciples, But consider the discouragement of the first couple for whatever reason. And consider the exultant joy of these two, I call them kids, in the Peruvian diocese of Chimbote. Discipleship, 2 by 2. They're always pictured together. Zbigniew and Michael. The Jewish people have a term for what I'm talking about, and it's called shaliach. It means that you not only represent Christ, but that you embody the one who sends you. In other words, you see them, you see me, says Christ. That's discipleship. You hear them, you hear me. Shaliach. You embody the person who sends you, which is much more than being a simple agent, of course. And of course, we're all sent. And you expect me to say that, don't you? Sunday morning, and the Gospel's about discipleship. We're all sent. But don't complicate this whole being sent business. I give 2 extreme examples to mention what devotion can do to people's lives. But for ourselves, we're not in a Peruvian village, and we're not discouraged in a church without a roof. But I'll give you a disciple. I'll give you a disciple. The woman, her husband died after 60 years of marriage. Can you imagine? So they moved her to a nursing home, and she didn't speak to anybody. She just sat there. And she never made any requests to the staff. All she'd do is sit there in her rocking chair and rock. She didn't have many visitors, and there are a few people who, because she didn't say anything, felt rather awkward about the silence. She just sat there looking ahead. But a young nurse would go into the day room, and she'd try to engage her in conversation and ask questions, and it wasn't working. So she put another rocking chair next to the elderly lady, and she rocked with her. Not hard to do, you see. And before leaving, she'd touch her arm a little bit and squeeze her hand and offer a tissue. A few weeks later, the elderly woman finally spoke. And you know what she said? She took the young nurse's hand and she said, "Thank you for rocking with me." You see, that's discipleship, my friend, and you've done it. And you've done it. And the purpose of reading this gospel is to remind you of why you're doing it. You have all rocked in rocking chairs next to somebody who won't speak, in your own way, and whatever life has thrown at you, you've done that. But don't forget, according to this gospel, when they see you, they see Christ. And when they hear you, they hear Christ's words. We find that awesome, overwhelming, frightening, however you want to react. But the reality is there. We are Christ's body in the world. You'd be surprised what a rocking chair can do in the salvation of people.